Hey everyone, welcome to week 68. Today is day 4. Today is Thursday. This is our 4th day on our remnants week. I think we've done well. This is a very quiet, very solemn week. So I'm pretty happy that this week, the nature of this week follows what we did last week, which was a little bit crazy. So we'll see how we do today.
Okay, let's get started. This is day 4. This is Thursday. This is our 4th day on our remnants week. Remember, throughout this week, what we're trying to do is kind of settle down, slow down, in order to be able to make sense all the cool stuff that happened a week ago. Yesterday, I was saying we don't have to be literal about this. Maybe last week symbolizes what has happened in the last 6 months. Maybe last week symbolizes what has happened in the last 2 years. All we're trying to do is to put a little bit of time aside and say, we need these moments of reflection. We need these moments where we slow down, where we take it easy. We don't always have to be firing at all cylinders. We don't always have to be working at 400%. We don't always have to be just painting, because if that's all we're doing, our mind is just going to understand painting as an action. It's always going to associate painting as this thing where you sit down or you're standing in front of your easel and you just, paint. You move your hand, you move your arm, you move your elbow, and you just put paint down on a surface. And maybe you're making super effective paintings. Maybe they look great, because if you concentrate on working your butt off, for sure you're going to make advances. And for sure there's going to be a ton of small triumphs in those efforts. But in order to recognize how those small wins can have a lasting effect on our painting practice, we need to take a break. And it doesn't mean that we can't paint during that break, but our mind has to be thinking about the paintings that we deemed as successful. That's going to be the only way that we can try and make sense of those things, and that we can sort of distill that act and turn it into useful information, into something that we can learn about ourselves, and subsequently something that we can use to advance our painting. Ideally, our goal is to get closer to the notion of painter that we have in our minds, to the idea of the painter that we want to be. The information that we gather in these moments where we reflect upon what we've done, if we do our job well and we can recognize that information, those learnings are going to aid us in constructing this road that is going to get us closer to the painter and the person that we want to be. So this is very important. And I'm spending a lot of time talking about this particular moment. And we've tasked this week, with the responsibility to focus on this reflective act, because it is that important. Painting is not just about learning how to paint. I've said this many times before, but learning how to paint in the grand scheme of things, it is not that tough. I mean, don't get me wrong. It is challenging. It is very frustrating. And we're all going to die thinking that it is a beautiful act that we learn from every single time we set up and paint. We are not supposed to feel like we've conquered painting. That's not supposed to be a feeling that enters our body. If you've felt that, you need to check yourself, because the greatest of painters always felt that painting was challenging. So we need to listen to them and we need to learn from them. So yes, even though painting, the formal part of painting, is tough, it's eternally challenging, it is something that can be taught. The fundamentals of painting can be taught. And what's amazing is that those haven't changed throughout centuries, throughout millennia. Those are the same. Those are our constant. Those are the things that tie us with painters from 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. And they will tie us to painters in the future. Even if they don't use paint, even if they're not using pigments and binders, it doesn't matter. Like, the DNA of painting is always going to be the same. And that's what links us with painters of the past. And it's what's going to link us with painters of the future. So that's a pretty beautiful thing. But again, those fundamentals, which remain constant throughout time, those can be taught. Mastered? Only a few extraordinary people throughout history have been able to really really master them. Those are amazing people. Out of billions and billions of people that have inhabited this earth, there's only a few that have been able to express with such power through painting. We need to celebrate those people because those people are very, very special. So again, painting is difficult, but can be taught and it can be learned. But to turn this act of expression into an act of self-expression, for us to communicate ourselves through painting, for us to know how to say things through painting, now that takes a lifetime. When we decide to be painters, our life is not going to be just about blobs of paint and brushes and palettes and boards and papers and linens. I mean, that's a beautiful part of painting. That is our language. We are expressing through those things. But the toughest thing to do in all of this is to understand what is it that we want to say and how that can be translated and empowered through painting. That's going to take so much time. And I'm not going to say it's more difficult than, the formal aspects of painting, but, they go hand in hand. Learning about yourself, learning how to express yourself effectively, powerfully, that is not an easy task. And it's not supposed to be easy because it's supposed to take you a lifetime. Imagine if it was easy. If after 2 months you're done, what are you going to do for the rest of your life? Painting becomes meaningless. If done properly, this is something that's going to be with you for your whole life. It's going to be right there for you. So what they don't usually tell you is that part, that part where you have to reflect upon the things that you've painted and you have to analyze and interiorize every single thing that you've done is something that you have to train. And you have to train it the same way you train painting. In the same way, you always have to remind yourself of values or to check your proportions in your drawing or to try to communicate through simple shapes or to try to understand how to depict volume and three-dimensionality, how to speak about depth and space. The same way you can train yourself to do all those things, and those are very tangible things, you can also train yourself in understanding your voice, in knowing what you want to say. What is that spark that is driving you to paint? What moves you? Why does it move you? All those things can be understood, but you have to make an effort. You have to try and make sense of those things. So for example, yesterday, let's take yesterday's painting as a cool example. I got this idea in my mind that I was going to paint like a little glob of paint, a little blob of cobalt teal. Cobalt teal became this thing that I was quite reticent about. I really felt that I was going to have no connection with this paint. And I was going to push myself to use it just because I was going to try to make myself feel uncomfortable. And hopefully in that process of feeling uncomfortable, I was going to learn about the blue hue. I was going to understand how to broaden the possibilities when working with a primary color palette, where cobalt teal was my blue hue. Those were the formal expectations that I had with this exercise. But I never thought that this color would be part of my palette. I was like, no, you can't earn a place in my palette that easily. It's not that my palette is this exceptional thing. No. But my palette is special because it's tied to me. And it's almost like, a friendship. It's like meeting somebody and thinking that the day after you met that person, you can say, oh, we're best friends for life. I found my best friend. No, it doesn't work that way. It's been kind of weird because I left cobalt teal in my palette. I was like, you know what? I'm going to leave it. There was something telling me, just leave it. Leave it there. Let's see what happens. Just leave that color there and try to introduce it to your palette, not with every single mixture that you do. So what I've been trying to do, and I don't know if you've noticed it throughout the first 3 paintings during this week, but I've kind of used my base palette for most of the painting. And then when I do need accents, I introduced cobalt teal. So I introduced it lightly through the greens that I painted on that foil on Monday's painting. It was very quiet, but also very evident with those little bits of rainbow, those tiny little moments of the visible light spectrum that you could see in the bubbles, in the soap bubbles. And for yesterday, I think it was quite evident that I was using cobalt teal because I was painting cobalt teal. I was trying to make sense of the place that this color has in my palette and the fact that it does remain in my palette. Even though I thought this was going to be like this ephemeral thing, this momentary act where I had placed this color, but I was going to quickly take it away from my palette as soon as I was done. But then I realized it's still there. Something is prompting me to just leave it there. This is a little strange. This is a little weird. And I have to try, and this is what this week is about, I have to try to make sense of why I think that it should be there. So instead of understanding it as a practical color, instead of saying, okay, I need to keep using cobalt teal in my mixes, trying to solve things through the mixture of cobalt teal and the other colors in my palette, I was like, let's just spend a few hours looking at this bit of paint, this little blob, and let's just try and reflect upon why it's still there, why I'm so hesitant to take it away when I was so sure that it would never be part of my palette. I think that if you check the voiceovers from last week, I was like, yeah, this is good. This is all nice. This is a great color. I called it gaudy. I thought it was horrible. And I said, it's not going to be here forever. It's going to find a place for this week's exercises, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be part of my palette. Like, you can't earn that place so easily. You have to really work hard to become part of the relationships that I have already established that make up the core of my palette. So what changed? In such little time, what changed? What made me change my mind? What made me rethink this? I don't know. I don't know the answer. I'll try to make sense of it as I'm speaking right now, but I can tell you that I'm not entirely positive about how I feel about this color. I think I like the possibility of having it there as an accent. I really like the fact that I know that it's not there to be overused. It would never be a color that I would say it's going to be part of all my mixing. Like if I need a light opaque blue, it's going to always be there. I don't know. I don't see it as that. I kind of see it as something that is very, very special. If I need an accent in saturation, it's going to be there. Now, this also poses a problem because the way I've always understood painting is that colors are very, very closely sort of knit together. They create relationships where they can feel each other out throughout the whole of the painting. I understand my painting as this puzzle where everything just fits together very, very nicely, perfectly. That is so important to me that I've decided, and I think this is plain to see when you look at my paintings, that the choices in my palette were always going to be super limited. So if I have a small number of colors in my core palette, then the chances of something being dissonant are very, very low, almost impossible. Like if your whole palette is very harmonious, you can try really hard, but there's almost no way of creating disparate moments throughout your painting. I've always understood having a color like cobalt teal in this kind of sea of grayness and control as being something quite scary. There's risk to this color. And I kind of like that. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Like, I like the responsibility of using that color, but I want to make it important. And it's almost the same way I use bismuth yellow or I use my lemon yellow, a bright yellow, because you guys know that my base yellow, the yellow that I would use for my core palette, is an earth yellow. So anything that's high chroma, anything that's yellow-orange like cat yellow, or a yellow-green like lemon yellow, those things are always going to feel a little bit foreign, a little bit, but they also feel very exciting. So in a way, this kind of feels like the bismuth yellow, although this is a much weirder color, to be honest. I mean, this is a lot stranger. Cobalt teal is a lot stranger than bismuth yellow. So when I decided that I was going to paint the actual color, this blob of paint, I was just going to, point at the color with my painting. This thought crossed my mind, and I think I mentioned this yesterday, just passing, but the thought crossed my mind that I could do a very kind of sensual, almost like photorealistic blob of paint. Something akin to a Will Cotton painting. I know that nowadays there's a lot of people that kind of paint in that fashion, but I think Will is the kind of OG in that sense. I mean, there's a bunch of like photorealists and hyperrealists before him, but Will Cotton's work feels a little more organic, a little more naturalistic in a way. And for some reason, in my path, it has more weight than the work of photorealist painters or hyperrealist painters. I was lucky enough to see a bunch of their work when I was younger, when I was studying in New York. And I remember going to a Will Cotton show, one of these huge candy paintings, and I loved it. I forget where it was, Gagosian, Mary Boone, somewhere like that. But it was amazing. I remember seeing that show, and I was like, these are so sensual. This is amazing. So the thought crossed my mind to do like this sexy glob of paint. If cobalt teal is going to be part of my palette, I don't want it to be flashy. Because the moment it becomes flashy, then it just separates itself way too much from the rest of my colors, from the rest of my palette. And if it does that, my paintings are going to suffer. So I told myself, I need to paint, and this is what I said yesterday, I need to paint a glob of cobalt teal as if it was Morandi, a Giorgio Morandi painting, which makes no sense whatsoever. I think a color like cobalt teal would have given Morandi a heart attack. But that's how I thought about it, and that's how it made sense. If this color is going to be part of my palette, it has to play a role, and I still have to be very much so in control of the color. So it can be an accent, and I think I acknowledge that power that it has with Mondays and Tuesdays painting. But I think that conversation that I had with it yesterday is the one that made me realize today that I can use it, and I can use it well with the rest of my colors. This is a brush we use to clean the tiles in our bathroom, just to scrape everything off. And I was like, this is perfect because it's not a dirty brush. I mean, it's pretty clean. It's a brush that does dirty work. And I was like, this is perfect. This green that's only possible with the help of that cobalt teal and my bismuth yellow, these two colors that I have in my palette that are supposed to be accents, I need for them to understand that they have to be willing to do dirty work, that they are going to live among dirty work, because my whole life is going to be about grays. I know that about my work. I know myself. I'm not going to wake up one day and say, you know what, from now on, I'm going to paint like Dana Schutz. No, that's not going to happen. I assure you, that's not going to happen. I know. Never say never. But if I was a betting man, I would go all in saying that I'm not going to be that sort of painter. So it's about recognizing that these colors can be part of my painting, but I have to be extra diligent about their use. It is a reminder that I have to be in control. So today's painting was a very nice, simple painting that is possible because of the painting that we did yesterday. So I'm very happy about that. Nothing flashy. I don't think my painting will ever be about just showing off. That's going to be it for today. Thank you guys for hanging out. I'll see you tomorrow where we try to finish off this week. We'll see if we leave some room for cobalt blue to play its role, or if we're going to rely on our gray palette tomorrow. I have a feeling that for this week to be useful, we need to go back to our grays. So we'll see how we do tomorrow. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Love you. Bye.